Hello and welcome to episode 168 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host, Devon Dundee. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Sigmund Judge. Sigmund, WWDC is barreling towards us. I can't believe we're so close to finding out about what Apple has in store for us software-wise this year, including, of course, tvOS 19. We're not going to do our full wishes and predictions just yet, but I thought as it's getting closer, maybe we could just do a quick vibe check and find out how we're feeling as it's getting closer and closer. So how you doing, buddy?
I am, as always this time of year, excited, but also a little reserved. I don't know how many people are aware of this, but tvOS was announced 10 years ago at WWDC, ahead of the Apple TV release, then the Apple TV HD, and the launch of tvOS. Of course, there were developer units that were handed out, which were practically the retail units in the different box. Being that it's been 10 years, and I think whilst we've come a long way with the OS, there's some things that have stayed and probably overstayed their welcome in terms of design, and with the rumours of a complete redesign across the board to echo the look and feel of Vision OS with all of its circular icons and its beautiful glacial elements. I'm both excited and a little apprehensive. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I think I'm feeling about the same. I've been leaning more into the positive, excited side just because the entire redesign across the board sounds really exciting to me, and I can't wait to see what that's going to look like. And I like to imagine just different things that they could do. And I'm really hopeful that tvOS is going to be included in that, at least in some ways. We've seen different elements across Apple's various OSs getting these out-of-step design updates and looking very different from the rest of the OS. I'm thinking like the action button menu on the iPhone, but also the TV app got that sidebar redesign not too long ago that really felt like something from the future that had been pulled back into our time. And so I'm hoping that all of that cohesion is going to come together across the platforms and that tvOS is going to be included in that. I think my one holdback on that, the thing that does make me a little bit nervous about the tvOS redesign potentially coming, is that Apple's home strategy seems to have hit some issues with the delays of Apple Intelligence features. And of course, that's pushing back the home product that we've been hearing about forever. And of course, Apple TV is tied into Apple's home strategy. And so I hope that the tvOS update, the big one, is not going to be held back until that product is ready to go. Hopefully we'll get the tvOS redesign this summer into the fall, and then we'll see that fully fleshed out with the home product rather than holding it all back until the big home push with that product does come out. So that is the one snag that I could foresee. Of course, we don't ever know for sure what we're going to see at WWDC. There's rumors, of course, But Apple always surprises us. And we know they love an anniversary, so I'd love a 10-year anniversary shout-out to tvOS as well. It's always hard to keep up with the anniversaries because they started with the iOS number and continued on from there, and so it doesn't exactly line up with the number of years that tvOS has been with us, but I've got my fingers crossed for it. I think I'm choosing to lean into the positivity, and if Apple breaks my heart, well, it's better to have loved and lost, right?
Yeah, and if you think about it, last couple of WWDCs has been some kind of product launch. Could we see, on the 10th anniversary of tvOS being announced, a new Apple TV in terms of hardware, if the story for the software isn't quite ready, at least get the hardware into developers' hands and into the public hands?
It's been rumored for some time. I think it's ready to go at a moment's notice, so I would love it if they pulled it out for WWDC, and we don't have too long to wait to find out.
Lots to look forward to in the very near future, Devon, but what have we got to look forward to on this episode of Magic Rays of Light?
We've got some fun stuff and some not so fun stuff. We're going to break down impending tariffs, a word we've heard a lot lately. They're now facing the film industry in the US and their potential impacts for the global film industry. We're going to catch up on a bunch of Apple original trailers, so many trailers over the past couple weeks, Sigmund, and I'm excited to break those down with you. But we start with our highlight on this week's premiere of Apple original series, Murderbot. In a high-tech future, a rogue security robot secretly gains free will. To stay hidden, it reluctantly joins a new mission protecting scientists on a dangerous planet, even though it just wants to binge soap operas.
I was built to protect and obey humans, but now that I've hacked my programming, I can do whatever I want, as long as they don't find out.
Do you think we can trust her?
Stay calm. Eye contact.
It seems like it's going through something.
Stop staring at me.
I wasn't. Stop staring at me.
Murderbot is written, directed, and produced by Chris and Paul Weitz, based on the novels by Martha Wells, starring and executive produced by Alexander Skarsgård, with an ensemble cast including Noma Dumasweny, David Desmashian, Sabrina Wu, Ash K. Khanna, Tatiana Jones, and Tamari Podimsky. We've had an opportunity to see at least the premiere episodes ahead of embargo, so some brief thoughts are incoming, but Sigmund, give us a little more insight into what Murderbot is.
Well, let's get into it. This is firstly a very funny, bite-sized sci-fi with a lot of sass, thanks to a brilliant portrayal of a partly biological security cyborg that has hacked itself in order to gain free will. Its first point of call is to rename itself, deciding on the name Murderbot, which is ominous in itself, whilst summarising how disgustingly simple, obnoxious and dumb the humans it's programmed to serve are, through, of course, some hilarious internal dialogue from Chris and Paul White's adaptation, only to be interrupted by human co-workers torching its hand. I think the introduction to this series is really, really interesting in the sense that, this newly gained free will of Murderbot as we begin this journey with this cyborg. There are ramifications for any security sec robot found to have hacked itself and go beyond its programming to serve and protect. Instant shutdown and a recycling of its components by melting, and that's where the story of Murderbot really shines. A series on a surface level that follows the adventures of Murderbot as it completes these dangerous assignments whilst protecting itself from being found out. But it's the way it's drawn to humans whilst ultimately being appalled at their weakness that is the central component of, I think, some fascinating storytelling. We, of course, rejoin Murderbot, still posing as a security sec unit it was designed for, as it serves a small team of scientists working for an all-encompassing super company. You've got humans Mensa, Baradari, Rutty, and couple Pinley and Arada, who all show elements of what make humans brilliant, but also just how lacking, simplistic, and at times primitive we are as a race compared to the emerging technology that we've built that could potentially replace us. There's, of course, a wariness of these humans of just how secure bots work, their habits to watch endless hours of entertainment beamed into them, including a hilarious portrayal of Sanctuary Moon, this long-running soap opera that Murderbot is learning from in order to convey these different emotions that it just doesn't have. I mean, there is one quote in the very first episode where they mention how sec units watch the entertainment feeds, and they also go rogue and kill the people they're supposed to protect. So there's a self-awareness here of the environment in which they are in, but the humans' concerns do not compare to that of Garathin, brilliantly portrayed by David Dasmakian, and it's the tension really between Alexander Skarsgård's portrayal of Murderbot and itself that forms such a central focus, especially in the early episodes.
Yeah, you can tell from the start that Garathin is not a fan of sec units. There's this meeting between the scientists and the company, and they're getting set up for their journey, and picking up all the things they need, and the company says, you really need a sec unit, and Garathan is immediately pushing back against that. It creates tension not only between him and Murderbot, but also between him and the rest of the group. And we learn a little bit later what that's rooted in. Garathan is an enhanced human who's been sort of modded to interact better with computers, but of course his bandwidth is nothing on the level of Murderbot. And so there's like this jealousy almost between the two of them, where they're performing similar functions in terms of processing data and computer interfacing, but they both think that they're better than the other, and they're distrustful of each other. And it actually creates a really interesting dynamic when they're talking, because they're having the conversation that we can hear, but they're also interfacing on a lower level over the network that we can't fully understand. And they're both trying to be kind of sneaky about it. And it makes for some really interesting conversation that I hadn't really seen portrayed in that way before. And I thought that was really, really interesting. But I think the whole relationship between Garathan and Murderbot is emblematic of the way Murderbot approaches humanity in general. He's very, very skeptical of them, almost terrified in a lot of ways because of his free will and the fact that if that's discovered, if he steps out of his programming in any way and anyone catches it, well, that means he's basically going to be the robot version of killed, right? He's going to be recycled and reset. And so he's constantly fighting against his disdain, might be too strong of a word, but it's borderline. I think he's grossed out by humans. He definitely sees them as inferior, but at the same time, he also fears them. And then on the level of the soap operas that he's watching, you can't help but spend 7,000 hours with a group of people and start to develop some kind of emotional attachment to them. And so there's also this level of wanting to connect, despite the fact that any sort of connection would mean his doom. And so he's weighing all these things. I call him he. It's an it. That's kind of something I've gone back and forth on, unfortunately, but played wonderfully by Alexander Skarsgård. And it's just this tension within Murderbot that's constantly playing out. And it kind of comes to a head in the episode. There's a moment where Murderbot literally pulls back the mask and reveals a little bit of the way that it is going against its programming and the protocols in order to help humans. And Garathan immediately catches it, and then that leads to some really interesting conversations and, again, more skepticism. So they're on this remote planet, they're stuck together, they're depending on each other, but at the same time, there's these tensions that make it really interesting, and all these ethical questions about, AI and freedom and safety. It's got a lot of really interesting elements going on. And in the midst of all that, it's also just absolutely hilarious, right? So many laughs, the jokes, the voiceover, but also just the way the group interacts with each other and some of just the random things that pop up as they're talking. This is a version of sci-fi that I really enjoy, in that it's not just like straight fantasy, but it's got a little bit of a meta, almost just a lightheartedness to it that I was not expecting based on the premise. And I think it makes for really, really great watching.
And I also think, whilst this is a complex watch because of the different things in which this is trying to tackle, it's not bogged down in the, kind of traditional sci-fi tropes of like hardcore sci-fi, like a Foundation, or, to a degree, maybe even Star Wars back in the day. But what it does have is it has that production quality of either of those, right? And that really blew me away. I think the world building of this show is superb. Without spoiling too much, some of the creativity in the monster design we've seen in the trailers already, and I won't say any more than that. But the effects, the crafts even, and the spaces in which they're visiting and inhabiting, I think are really, really interesting. As interesting as some of the relationships between the humans that are on board the ship. Different relationship statuses, both professionally and personal relationships, and how they evolve. Very, very interesting stuff. And of course, this is all being watched by both Murderbot and by Garathan, who can go into Murderbot's feeds and watch all of the security cameras, and I think some of the elements of what happened early on in the interpersonal relationship are frayed in some ways and get a little bit more complex. In terms of like technical sensibilities, I do think tonally it is kind of all over the place, but I don't think that's a negative. I think it really does find its places in which to pull certain levers. So I was completely engaged by this, even though it was slightly different to what I imagined reading some of the books in preparation for this over the last year. But I really enjoyed it. I think the music really enhances it from Amanda Jones. There's also a brilliant intro sequence. We constantly talk about the intro sequences for Apple Originals. This is on, I'd say, a similar level to that of the Severance intro. Very, very creative. Made me want to have my own little mini Murderbot action figure, and maybe action figures for the crew as well. This could be something that, should they want to, they could evolve into some great merchandising for this show. When watching this, I was thinking, actually, who is this for? Because there's lots of sci-fi out there. There's people that I think aren't necessarily into sci-fi that might see the concept, read the synopsis and go, no, it's not for me. This, I think, actually is going to draw people in that wouldn't normally give something like this a shot, and I think they'll be rewarded for it if they do. Avenue 5 was a recent one on Max that lasted 2 seasons, was fantastic, and tonally, from a comedic point of view, it's very on point with this series. I'd also say the franchise, another Max show from last year, which was talking about the behind the scenes of like a superhero film, and the back and forth and the dialogue there is very reminiscent and has some similarities with Murderbot. But going away from comedy a moment, Alex Garland's Ex Machina, which, if you've seen this film and you like to explore the elements in which that film did with regard to AI and our relationships to these tools that we've developed and its relationship to us, and trying to kind of sum both sides of the equation up, I think you're going to love Murderbot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Avenue 5 comparison is really apt. That was a show that I enjoyed a lot, and I think there's definitely vibes of this. I actually really thought of Avenue 5 while watching the soap operas with Murderbot. I thought those looked a lot like Avenue 5 as well. It really gave me those vibes, and some really great guest appearances in those. That's a really fun element of the show as well. I'm really glad that they threw it in there. But this is a great series so far. Really enjoying it, and I hope people will check it out. Like you said, maybe some people who traditionally wouldn't check out the sci-fi kind of thing, maybe give it a try. And before we wrap up this conversation, I think we have to throw in this summarization of Humans by Murderbot. I think this gives you a really good idea of Murderbot's perspective and kind of the show's take on humans. It says, humans are made up of feelings and the exchanging of words and fluids. There you go.
Oh, yeah. If only it were that simple. I guess thinking of the creation of Murderbot and its pluses and its frailties and whatnot, because there are some, is there one aspect of Murderbot we'd love to gain as humans?
I think Murderbot's ability to regenerate or be 3D printed back to health after being injured is a great one. We get to see that in the first couple episodes. And yeah, I'd love to get a cut and then just stick my arm in a machine and it gets stitched back up and I'm good to go. I think that would be a great ability to add if we could get that tacked on to human abilities. What about you?
I mean, for this podcast alone, I think the ability to watch 7,000 plus hours of content in mere moments had me very, very jealous, though Sanctuary Moon probably wouldn't be my thing. But there's so much great television out there that sometimes things get lost in the mix. I don't think Murderbot is going to be one of those. Currently riding high at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, ahead of its global premiere this Friday on Apple TV Plus across all of your screens. I'm really looking forward to coming back and talking about this show after its run. But let's get into something a little heavier. I guess there is one aspect of this conversation that could be related to Murderbot, and that is artificial intelligence and the impacts of that on the film industry. But, let's start off with how we got to this place. Of course, we're talking about tariffs, or the impending tariffs, the proposed tariffs. I don't really know, because it all just came out in one social media post, and what can you really make of that?
I think it's inevitable. Everyone's having to talk about tariffs right now. It's a conversation that I don't know that tech podcasters were expecting to have, but here we are. And I think just a little bit of background on this. Of course, the big conversation for the past couple weeks has been the Apple versus Epic lawsuit and the developments there, where Apple had the injunction against them. They were found in contempt. And now there's been a lot of changes on the App Store in the US because of that. And we're still seeing the fallout of all that. There's an appeal, and we'll see how all that goes and try to keep up to date with it. But that's been seen as like Apple's big legal battle, or the big threat that it's been facing. But as everyone's been having that conversation in the background, this next threat that could very much impact Apple's entertainment business has been looming. And it was all kicked off with a truth posted on Truth Social by U.S. President Donald Trump, who has announced 100% tariffs on international films. He says, "The movie industry in America is dying a very fast death. Other countries are offering all sorts of incentives to draw our filmmakers and studios away from the United States. Hollywood and many other areas within the USA are being devastated. This is a concerted effort by other nations and therefore a national security threat. It is, in addition to everything else, messaging and propaganda. Therefore, I am authorizing the Department of Commerce and the United States Trade Representative to immediately begin the process of instituting a 100% tariff on any and all movies coming into our country that are produced in foreign lands. We want movies made in America again." There's a lot going on in that post, which, again, is called The Truth because it's posted on truth.social. Very interesting social network I'm not on, but of course we see screenshots from it all the time because the president uses it. But I think the main thing that's worth discussing from that, there's, again, a lot of claims being made there, but the main thing is the kickoff of this process of 100% tariffs on international films in the U.S. So can you give us a little bit of background on like what's going on here and what this could mean?
Well, I think one of the kind of key subjects over the last few months has been tariffs and how they affect products, right? Especially production of products. We've seen Apple recently make statements and commitments to shift production either more to India or to invest more in United States production. We'll have to see how that all goes. But this tariff is very, very different because a film isn't a singular entity, right? It's a sum of different parts from all over the world, and that's really what's made the industry boom in terms of creativity in recent years. And we've constantly expressed how we are living in the golden age, really, when it comes to storytelling and these beautiful creations that we get to talk about every week. There'll be 10 or so highlights each episode, and we try our best to get through as much of it as we can on the TV app, but it's almost impossible. That said, details on this are thin. Very little substance to take from this one social media post, but let's take a look at the situation as we see it. Overall production in the US was down 26% last year compared to with 2021, according to data from Prod Pro, which tracks production. Film and TV production had fallen in LA by nearly 40% over the past decade, a huge loss for the area due to the inability for California to really compete with international production houses, not in terms of the incredibly talented people that exist within the local filmmaking community there, but in terms of finance, unionization, and workers' rates, which are considerably higher in the States, considering there is no free healthcare, and therefore those kind of things have to be subsidized as well and worked out. Now, governments around the world have offered more generous tax credits and cash rebates to lure productions over to help capture what is a greater share of a predicted $248 billion spent across global production budgets this year. States like California and Georgia, which has its own Hollywood of the South and Atlanta, they offer their own incentives, but they still struggle to compete with the different levels of financial incentives and breaks offered elsewhere around the globe. In a recent Prod Pro poll of film executives asking about preferred filming locations, no location in the US made the top 5. Toronto, the UK, Vancouver, Central Europe and Australia came out on top, with California placing 6th, Georgia 7th, New Jersey 8th and New York 9th. And as probably been quite rightly pointed out in the past, the US president, he is a fan of tariffs. I think at one point he said that tariff was his favourite word in the dictionary, in the way in which he would. And they are, let's be real, they're designed to lead consumers toward American products, and American-produced movies overwhelmingly dominate the domestic marketplace already, with the majority of these international breaks leading to profit revenue for US-based companies. So it's a confusing one. On one hand, you're wanting to protect the industry. I don't know if it's disingenuous to say he may be trying to look out for workers. I don't think that's the case, because history doesn't really prove that. But there is an industry beyond those that count up the profit at the end of the day. And whilst, grips and lighting and these kind of people get sent over to other international marketplaces to train other people, in the end, are they possibly costing their communities jobs? So there's a lot of complex. I don't think there's like a good, bad. I think there are lots of different shades of grey in this conversation. One of the current US administration's first points of call, though, was to assign 3 actors to find ways of bringing the industry back to Hollywood, those being Sylvester Stallone, Mel Gibson and Jon Voight. And the results, I think, have been pretty predictable, Devon. Meetings have resulted in the need for greater tax incentives, which had already been proposed by Californian Mayor Gavin Newsom, by expanding California's film and television tax credit program to $750 million annually, up from a mere $330 million, with Voight's apparently discussing a proposal of a national stackable tax credit of 10 to 20% on top. But, of course, a US producer who chooses to shoot in a foreign country would face a tariff equal to 120% of the value of the foreign tax incentive received, according to a report by Deadline, who are always on the money with this kind of stuff. So, what it sounds like, Devon, is instead of giving a tax incentive to the film industry at the levels of competing nations, the current US administration are going to overtax everyone else. Your thoughts on this, and I guess, is this a service tariff in your mind, or What do you think the effects are of this?
I think my first question would be, what does this practically look like if it does get implemented? Which is a question in and of itself, right? Is this actually going to happen, or was this just something that got posted on social media and isn't going to go any further? But if this does come through, you ask if this was a service tariff. That's a really difficult question to answer because a film is not just one thing, right? A film is a process that results in a product, but there's a whole bunch of steps that go up to that. So at what point does this tariff come into place? Is it during the pre-production, during the production? Is it when a customer goes to buy a movie ticket or buy the film on a digital marketplace or subscribe to Disney Plus and that film is streaming? I mean, there's so many different places that films end up, ways that they're distributed. I don't really know how this could possibly be enforced. And ultimately, I think if it was enforced, it'd probably end up being paid less by the production companies and probably more by consumers who are going to be paying more for movies, which means they're going to be less likely to go to the movie theaters and buy films on digital marketplaces. And we're going to see streaming services getting more expensive. I don't see how it could go any other way other than ending up with price increases for consumers, which to me just doesn't seem like it's going to be the intended goal of getting people to watch more U.S. movies. I also just wonder, is getting people to watch more movies created domestically really the goal that we want? I mean, we want productions in the U.S., obviously. We want to do what we can to get more of the industry happening here and, reap more of the benefits. But as you said, we already are reaping in a lot of ways, a lot of those benefits through the corporations that are making profits and paying taxes. But I mean, there's something to be said for giving voice to international filmmakers and getting those films popular in other territories. And so I personally love to see international films doing well in the US and winning awards. I think that the whole idea that only American films should be popular and making money is just a really weird take, because why would we not want to hear from international voices? There's no rule that says U.S. film companies can't do well while also giving people the opportunity to hear from voices around the world. So it just feels like a weird dichotomy to me that isn't real and is just going to end up creating more issues for people who love movies in the U.S. like me, and not really helping out the people that it's trying to help out. It sounds like the industry is looking for more tax breaks, which makes sense. Who doesn't love a good tax break? But rather than going in that direction and easing the financial burden on productions, instead this tariff, this financial burden is going to be passed on to eventually, I would assume, consumers. And I think that's going to have a cooling effect on the industry, not a positive one. That's just kind of how I see it playing out. Do you think that makes any sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I kind of, as I said, film is a sum of many parts, right? And what's going to happen for the next Dune film? Right, they're going to have to shoot it out in Vegas. How's that going to work? So I think the core problem is, by introducing 100 or 120% tariff on a production that's being produced outside of the US, at least from the filming and shooting side of things. You've got like a Marvel film that might have a budget of 400 million. Suddenly it needs to have 800 million. And that's before marketing and everything else. How does a smaller independent film work? How do smaller, not necessarily even international voices, but how do smaller independent films get made? And how do they get an audience? I think that's the main thing. I think it's the thing that I'm drawn to most, actually, is not so much the big blockbusters, but the smaller films like Fancy Dance, which is then later picked up. And maybe we will see more of that happen to stem the blood flow, right, in regard to if this were to happen and cripple the industry. So there may be an element of positivity there, but I do worry because not only for storytellers themselves, but also for theatres. How do theatres continue to be viable? They're already suffering. The industry's suffering in terms of movies. TV shows, funnily enough, not mentioned in this. And I think there's a good reason for that. That being that TV makes a greater amount of money for the US than theatrical. So maybe it's an oversight, but I think that might be a purposeful oversight there. It does make me worry a little bit just in terms of the future of the theatrical experience. I'm sure the vultures are already circling your local theatre in order to build some luxury apartments.
Yeah, storage units. Lots and lots of self-storage units going up around here. Actually, one of my local theaters did just close. I have one near me now. And it's a sad state for a lot of things. You mentioned the finances of TV kind of outweighing the film industry, but it's also worth noting that in the U.S., the film industry is a surplus industry. We export more than we import, right?
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. has always been a central point for filmmaking, and even if productions are happening outside the U.S., it's still a lot of U.S. companies that are doing some of the biggest films in the world and benefiting from them. And tariffs, as far as I understand them, are usually meant to address when there's a deficit and try to turn that into a surplus. But if there's already a surplus, then that doesn't seem like the right method to kind of rectify the situation. The other thing that you have to worry about with tariffs is reciprocity. If we put a tariff on another country's films, well, they could put a tariff on our films, and then fewer people around the world are going to be seeing U.S. films, which could hurt the theatrical industry not only in the U.S., but worldwide. And so it's concerning to me. Again, I don't know how real the threat actually is. It's hard to gauge exactly whether or when this will happen. And hopefully the president is listening to his advisors, his 3 advisors to Hollywood and other people in the industry who are hopefully telling him, hey, we should probably need to lean more into the encouraging aspect of this rather than the discouraging. But I just don't see how this solves the problem that it's trying to solve personally.
I don't think it quite understands fully the problem. And I don't think it fully understands the problems that are to come with, of course, the increase in artificial intelligence use. That kind of stuff's obviously been busted by unions, but as union power kind of continues to dwindle, when it comes to the next set of negotiations, which are only going to be a few years away, where are they going to stand there? I mean, it's a very confusing situation. It's a situation that I think we will be keeping our eye on. And of course, we don't like to delve too much into politics. We like to delve into the creative aspects of the industry, and we like to shine a light on those that make these shows and these films such a joy to watch. So hopefully not too much more of this chit chat, and hopefully there is a resolvement, or maybe we never hear about it again, Devon. But we couldn't ignore it, not this week.
No, I think it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. My hope would be that we don't hear about it again, but regardless of what happens here, I mean, our best hopes and wishes are always with the people who make the stories that we love to see on screen. So our concern is always for encouraging creativity, encouraging more voices getting out there, helping stories find audiences, and increasing theatrical attendance, and just making the industry something that supports creativity. Because while it is about the money, you do have to make a living. It's really about the stories that get told and the experiences that we're able to have through them. So regardless of what happens, of course, we're rooting for the people on the ground who are out there doing the work and making these incredible shows and films that we get to talk about every week. Well, that's enough of tariffs, I think, Sigmund. Let's get into our Apple TV news for the week, starting with software updates. this week saw the release of tvOS 18.5 and its accompanying software updates for the other platforms. An update that's been in beta for quite some time, a quieter one, but a few interesting things that are worth mentioning, I think. First up, for tvOS 18.5, we've got Dolby Atmos support for wireless audio sync. This is a feature that was touted for tvOS 18 back last summer, and we weren't sure exactly when it was going to come. I think at one point you and I had concluded that it was out because it was in a beta, but then it got apparently pulled at some point. But now it's out for everybody on tvOS 18.5. So if you're using Bluetooth or AirPlay speakers and you're using that wireless audio sync feature, now you'll get Dolby Atmos support through it as well. Of course, you and I are big users of the HomePod, so we've been getting that benefit for quite some time. But one theme we've seen with tvOS 18 is bringing a lot of those kinds of features to other speakers as well, democratizing them, which I think is great to see. On iOS 18.5, iPadOS 18.5, and watchOS 11.5, there's a new buy with device option to approve TV app purchases on third-party devices. We've seen this on the Apple TV before when you go to purchase a title or a game or an in-app purchase. I do my watch, but you can do it with your phone or iPad as well, and you just authenticate there, and then you can approve the purchase without having to type in your password and all that good stuff. Well, that's now come to the TV app on platforms outside of tvOS. So really cool integration to see there, making it easier for people to make purchases. Finally, in visionOS 2.5, there's a new section in the TV app called Vision. This is awesome because I've always had a hard time tracking down, especially immersive videos, but also 3D movies as well. And there have been sections in the TV app for it, various times, rows, even whole collections, but there's never been one place to go to find everything. And now it's just a full-fledged tab right up there on the main navigation on the left side of the app. And you could go there, check out all the immersive videos as well as the 3D titles available to you. I think it's a really good idea, and I'm happy to see it come on visionOS.
Also included is the Apple Watch Pride Edition watch face, along with iPhone and iPad wallpaper in iOS 18.5 to celebrate the strength and beauty of LGBTQ plus communities around the world. There's a cool Pride band that is releasing on May 19th everywhere. It's available to order today and is assembled by hand from individual stripes of vibrant colour that are compression molded together. We've seen this kind of thing before, but this design's pretty striking in its variations. And well, this isn't just Pride Month and Mental Health Awareness Month. There's also another special day this week, Devon, that we want to focus on after Apple's celebration.
Yes, this Thursday is Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and in honor of that, Apple did their annual preview of a number of features coming to its platforms later this year, with the theme, of course, of accessibility, including, I think the big new one this year is App Store Accessibility Nutrition labels. Similar to privacy labels, developers will be able to indicate which accessibility features they support, so that people who are looking for specific features will be able to see straight from the App Store before they even download an app, will this work for me or not, which I think is very cool. Magnifier is coming to the Mac. This is going to work with your iPhone via continuity camera or just a USB camera. You can point it at different things in the real world to zoom in, to get text from it, to take pictures that you can manipulate. People who use Magnifier on the iPhone, I think, are really going to love having it on the Mac as well. And we got a screenshot of this in Apple's press release. It's a very interesting design for a Mac app. Could be the tiniest little preview of the upcoming redesign coming to Mac OS, but it's great to see that included on the Mac. Live Listen and Live Captions are coming together on the Apple Watch so that you could take advantage of these features that have been around for some time, but in a more cohesive way. So if you're wearing AirPods or different supported headphones, you can set your phone down in front of someone you're talking to and hear what they're saying through your headphones, but now you can also get captions for it on your Apple Watch, which is really cool. Of course, these features are coming, Apple says, later this year, which means in the fall, right? That's what we tend to see, but they like to preview these a little bit early in celebration of the holiday. Personal voice is being improved so that you only have to do 10 prompts instead of the usual 150 to enable it, and it's also faster to set up. This is the feature where you can create a synthetic version of your voice that can read back text, and it's great to see Apple continuing to improve that, because I know that's a very important feature for a lot of people who are losing their ability to speak. Braille access gives Braille users more ability to use note-taking tools on their iPhones and iPads and other Apple devices. You can even do live captions on a Braille reader, which I think is very cool. In visionOS, you'll be able to zoom in on different aspects of your field of view, and Apple is offering an API for camera access for approved accessibility apps, so that different apps will be able to see what you see, and if you're needing help, someone can talk you through what you're seeing. A really great addition to the platform, which has typically locked down the cameras for privacy's sake, but this is a great endpoint there. Accessibility Reader is a new platform feature that's going to enable you to change the look of text on your devices, whether you're reading something in the Files app or you're just looking at an app. You can expand the text size and spacing and colors and manipulate that in a way that's going to be more legible for you. There's a new protocol to support switch control for brain-computer interfaces. This is an emerging field. I think 10 people in the world have interfaces that can work with this API, but Apple is getting ahead, getting on board with this so that they can be a part of the research, so that they can help be a part of this emerging field for people who have accessibility needs even beyond what's currently available on Apple's platforms. This is the next step. And I've done very minimal research into this, but it looks very promising. Obviously, very cutting edge, and we have to be careful with this kind of research. But there are some people who are going to be testing this out, and it's great that Apple's on board with it. On tvOS, we're going to be getting assistive access, a feature that's been on the iPhone and iPad before to make it easier for people to use those devices. It's going to offer a simplified media player so that if someone is overwhelmed or just not able to parse the typical tvOS interface, then get a very simplified interface that will be easier for them to use, which is great. So lots of awesome accessibility features coming to Apple's platforms this fall, and the company is celebrating in other ways, including updates to haptic playlists in Apple Music, a special Fitness Plus dance workout with dancer Chelsea Hill, an inside look at Deaf President Now, a film that you and I are both very excited about and happy to get a little bit more of an insight into, and special spotlights in the App Store, the Books app, Podcast News, and the TV app.
Very, very cool, and always fascinating to hear about all of these features. Let's be honest, probably 90% of them aren't necessarily something that we will touch upon in our personal use. But I think, especially with this, I'm going to call it like brain control. Wow. To think this is really going to focus on such a small number of people, and yet Apple are there from really day dot. So yeah, fantastic stuff, and really looking forward to getting hands on with the accessibility features in tvOS and how many different changes you'll be able to make in terms of simplifying the UI there. There's already so much that you can do in tvOS in terms of adjusting the transparency within the OS, having white highlights around the different tiles of the apps, the size of font, the way audio and everything is manipulated without having to go to a menu and change something per user. But yeah, more and more and more coming. Just fantastic. I love this time of year, Devon.
Yeah, it's always awesome to see. It's incredible. We applaud Apple for continuing to invest in accessibility features. This is the 40th anniversary of Apple's first foray into accessibility, and continuing to push further and further. Meanwhile, the company has teamed up with Universal Music Group's Solos venture to release Sound Therapy, an Apple Music exclusive audio wellness collection designed to help listeners attain clearer focus, deeper relaxation, and better sleep. The feature offers a blend of songs from well-known artists, including Imagine Dragons, Katy Perry, Casey Musgraves, and Aurora, with special sound waves to achieve the desired effect. Gamma waves and white noise help with focus, theta waves aid in relaxation, and delta waves combined with peak noise help listeners achieve better sleep. I don't fully understand what those things do, but I think it's a cool idea to try to combine research into what kind of audio helps people with the original intention of artists to create something that's going to help people practically in their daily lives. I'm interested to give this a try and see how it works for me, because I'm a big user of the background noise feature on my iPhone, and I think this could be kind of the next step of that, where I could get some of the benefits but also get to listen to some music as well. The 3 sound therapy playlists, Focus, Relax, and Sleep, are now available in Apple Music.
Very, very cool, and a very cool introduction by Zane Lowe, which didn't really explain much, but I loved his calming voice and the way he presented the announcement earlier this week. Some other announcements in the world of apps from Apple. Of course, I'm talking about Apple Arcade, with an announcement of new games coming to Apple Arcade on June 5th. Uno Arcade Edition, the official reimagining of one of the most popular card games in the world, is coming to Apple platforms. Super excited about this, especially if there's an online element, because this is something I was addicted to in the early days of Xbox 360. Lego Hill Climb Adventures Plus, where iconic Lego worlds and Hill Climb Racing's physics-based gameplay collide. Very interesting there and inventive. Lost in Play Plus is an uplifting and wholesome point-and-click adventure, whilst Helix Jump Plus is the classic 3D arcade bouncing game. And we get What the Car, but in a completely different way. What the Car for Apple Vision Pro. I am so excited for this. It looks immense, and I think this is one we're going to have to highlight and talk about when it does release, Devon. Of course, we also have new updates for the service, including the arrival of Shaquille O'Neal in the greatest mode in NBA 2K25 Arcade Edition, a new Queens neighborhood in Skate City, New York on May 22nd, and a special Paddington event in Crayola Create and Play Plus starting June 26th. So lots and lots to either keep yourself occupied with or keep your little ones occupied with. But yeah, What the Car on Apple Vision Pro, Devon.
I can't even begin to prepare myself for that experience. I absolutely can't wait. Now, it's my understanding, Sigmund, that beyond Apple Arcade, you've been keeping yourself entertained with another app on your Apple TV that actually connects to some other hardware in your home. What is this app that you've been using to play your PlayStation?
It's called PX Play, and it does exactly that. It allows me to play my PlayStation 5 on Apple TV via remote play. Not just my Apple TV, though. I can play on my iPhone, my iPad, and my Mac with what I think is probably an easier connection setup than what Sony have with their first-party app. There's better low latency streaming, there's third-party controller support, which I'm very, very happy about, and you can also pair with multiple consoles, which is very, very cool. I have been playing a lot of PS5 this past week as I've recovered from some medical stuff, hence no podcast last week, apologies for that. And this app, PX Play, has been a godsend of sorts. The latency has been good enough to help me secure promotion on competitive sports titles, including FIFA, which is pretty much all I play on PlayStation. There's also manual controls for bitrate, frames per second, as well as resolution. So if you don't have the greatest of home networks, or if you're on location, you can adjust those to get the better quality for you. There's also support for multiple profiles, which includes button mapping. If you're handing off a controller to someone that may have different needs or just have a different way in which they want their buttons mapped, you can just easily switch to that profile. And there's also an easy setup guide for configuring your home router for remote streaming, which is really, really helpful. I tried this twice, once with just the standard way of doing things, and another by creating a VPN that was on my home network that I could log into on my iPhone or iPad to pretend to be on my home network. And I would say both kind of worked as well as one another. So that I think is really, really cool. And I think it just proves time and time again why tvOS development is important and how many breakthroughs there are, even if they don't necessarily get the big stories, because some people see TV as the thing that they watch TV on, and that's pretty much it. So lots and lots of cool things here. No need to buy a second console anymore. And I'd say my favourite part of this app, my favourite element, is, I'm sure you've been there, Devon. You're playing a beat 'em up, you're bashing all the buttons, and a finger slips on the PlayStation button or the Xbox button, and suddenly you've got the menu up, and you know your other button presses aren't being recognised, and you lose the game. You have a goal scored against you, you die, whatever it might be virtually. The wonderful thing about this is when you're in the game, you're actually locked to that app until you press the play pause button on the Siri remote. And then you can kind of decide to jump out, and all whilst, if you've got doorbells and different notifications going on tvOS, they will still come up on top. So you could even do like a picture-in-picture where you're playing a video game and you're watching a live sports game or something in a corner from one of your apps. Almost to the point of that concept that we had in terms of HDMI in on an Apple TV. This really kind of solves one of the key issues that I had. And of course, you can just easily now connect your AirPods to your PlayStation for private video game playing. So there's so much that this tackles.
Yeah, this is very cool. And for anyone who owns a PlayStation and wants to give this a try, of course, we'll link it in the show notes. But I really love that element of the outside controls are locked until you hit the pause button, like almost like you're playing back something, and then when you're ready to be done with that experience, you just pause it. That's a really smart element that I think other apps could actually adopt to avoid some of that frustration with accidentally closing apps, which I have 100% done in the past, and it is extremely frustrating. So yeah, this is cool. PX Play, check it out on the App Store.
Now, another thing that I've been doing over the past week, Devon, is I've been catching up on trailers. Lots and lots of trailers for Apple Originals to discuss over the past week, with all trailers, of course, linked in the show notes as usual, along with the first entry in a new strategy, a video preview for the month ahead in Apple Originals from Apple. Really love the idea that they are now showcasing on a monthly basis, hey, this is what's coming to the service. And when you put everything together in a collage in that kind of way, it really does get you excited, and it reminds you of when films and TV shows that maybe you did add to your watch list a while back, that they're coming, and to get ready and prepped. And so I really enjoyed that collage. It included a number of titles coming to Apple TV Plus this coming month. But there's one title that it did include that we're also looking forward to, because it got its first full trailer, and it's coming not only to Apple TV, but to Apple Vision Pro too. And that is Bono Stories of Surrender. It's just a few weeks away from streaming, Devon, and it's set to premiere at Cannes in the coming days. It's described as a vivid reimagining of Bono's critically acclaimed one-man stage show as he pulls back the curtain on a remarkable life, as well as the family, friends and faith that have challenged as well as sustained him on his journey as a son, father, husband, activist and rock star. The documentary provides never-before-seen exclusive footage from the Beacon Theatre shows in which this story and this concept comes from. And the film features Bono performing many of the iconic U2 songs that have shaped his life and legacy. It's directed by Andrew Dominic from Radical Media and Plan B Entertainment. Is set to also be the very first feature-length film available in Apple Immersive Video. And so we've had lots and lots of questions about this, Devon. The trailer did give us our first glimpse, but briefly, what did you think?
I thought this looked really compelling to me. I'm not the world's biggest Bono or U2 fan, so I think I could learn a lot from this. And just based on the trailer, it looks like something that is going to appeal to me as someone who just, again, doesn't know his story and would be interested in learning it. It looks like an interesting mix between a concert, a stand-up show, and a play. There's elements of performance, but there's also elements of him just kind of riffing with the audience and seeing how things go and getting laughs, which I think is great. So I think it answered a little bit of questions about the format while creating new questions in my mind, Sigmund, the premiere of which is this entire thing in black and white, the way the trailer is? And if it is the immersive version also in black and white? Because I think it'll be interesting to see, if it is black and white, what it's like to immerse yourself in an entirely black and white world for an hour and a half. We've seen clips in black and white, specifically with the Metallica concert. But to do that for an hour and a half and then take the Vision Pro off and suddenly be immersed in color again, I think that would be really interesting. So I guess we'll have to see. But I think this does look like one that I'm going to enjoy watching, especially with that immersive element. And if it's black and white, then that'll be even more interesting. What do you think?
I mean, I'm intrigued because I did think about that also in terms of black and white. Is this just a concept for the trailers, for the music documentaries that Apple are continuing following the Metallica? Or is it just coincidence? We'll have to wait and see. I am intrigued by the differences between the normal and the immersive versions of this feature length. Both, I think, in terms of the style and the approach, in terms of editing and in terms of the presentation as a whole, but also I think in terms of the length, the runtime. Something interesting in the TV app is when we see immersive video being previewed to add to your watch list, there's no runtime. But your traditional films, there is. So we know that Bono Stories of Surrender is supposed to run at 1 hour 26 minutes, at least in the traditional sense. And well, if that is the case for immersive video as well, I think director Andrew Dominic and his team had their work cut out. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, Bono Stories of Surrender premiering May 30th on Apple TV+, followed shortly afterwards on Apple TV+, by the 3-episode debut of Stick on June 4th. Bryce Cahill was headed for golf greatness when an on-course meltdown derailed his career. Now struggling to stay afloat, he goes all in to Mental Santi, a teenage phenom with immense potential, and maybe also save himself.
I found a kid who swings a golf club like a dream. What's your name?
I'm not into older guys, but I'm flattered.
I'd like to try to qualify him for the U.S. amateurs. Tell me you don't want to go on this trip.
I don't want to go on this trip.
Your mouth's saying one thing, but those eyes are saying something else. This is your shot at redemption? This is your mulligan? This game takes and it takes. The game's finally giving me something back.
This is created and showrun by Jason Keller, starring and executive produced by Owen Wilson, also starring Peter Dager, Mark Maron, Mariana Trevino, Lily Kay, Judy Greer, and Timothy Oliphant, with guest appearances from golf superstars including Colin Morikawa, Keegan Bradley, Max Homer, Wyndham Clark, and more. This is our first time actually seeing Bryce Cahill in motion and getting a sense of the tone in which we can expect, of course, from one of the producers of Ted Lasso. What did you think of this? And Did it meet expectations, or was it something a little different to what you were expecting from, of course, the great Owen Wilson and crew?
Well, we've been hearing about Stick for quite some time now. And I don't know, I have a tendency when I hear these synopses to just get an image in my head based on the plot and the people involved of what it's going to look like. And then I watch the trailer and I'm like, wow, that is really different from what I was expecting. I thought this would be a guy spinning out of control, causing scenes at places, maybe, the humor coming from his spiral before we get to him doing better or starting down a better path. But this trailer, there's an earnestness to it that I really enjoyed, and seeing Owen Wilson play this character who, yeah, he is down on his luck. He's made some poor decisions, but even just on the couple minutes that we spend with him, he's someone that I'm rooting for and want to see win. And maybe I should have known, with Owen Wilson being the one portraying him, that he was going to have that charm and that attitude of understanding the mistakes he's made and wanting to do better from the start. This wasn't what I was expecting. A very similar, I think, experience that I had with Your Friends and Neighbors, where the main character is just so much more relatable and likable than I was expecting. But again, with the Ted Lasso connection as well, I should have known this was going to be more uplifting and heartfelt than just a pure comedy of watching someone ruin their life, which is what I was thinking.
Yeah, I don't know why I had in my head also like something like a mix between Happy Gilmore and Wedding Crashers, which is not what this is. What I was really, really happy about was, of course, the charm of Owen Wilson and that not fading in any way whatsoever. And I'm really looking forward to seeing his sensibilities over the course of a TV series. But also, I don't know why I just kind of completely missed the casting for Judy Greer, who has a small role in this. So, count me in for a round of golf and a round of Price Cahill. Stick, debuting June 4th on Apple TV+. For a completely different variety now, Echo Valley. Kate is a mother struggling to make peace with her troubled daughter Claire, a situation that becomes even more perilous when Claire shows up to Kate's doorstep, hysterical and covered in someone else's blood. As Kate pieces together the shocking truth of what happened, she learns just how far a mother will go to try to save her child.
I need help. I was with my boyfriend and we started arguing. And I hit him with a rock.
I'll take care of it.
Hello? I know what you did.
Claire, what's going on?
Just tell me what really happened.
This upcoming thriller from Apple Original Films is directed by Michael Pearce, written by Brad Inglesby, and is produced by Ridley Scott and Michael Pruce of Scott Free Films, Kevin J. Walsh through the Walsh Company, and Brad Inglesby. Stars, of course, Julianne Moore, Sydney Sweeney, and Domhnall Gleeson. This was pretty intense, Devon.
It was really intense, and I think we knew that based on the synopsis. But again, as we find out more about the plot and what's really going on here, I think there's an element to this that I already know is going to pull on my heartstrings in terms of the relationship between Claire and Kate, their history, and Claire's struggles. Seems like she's got some kind of substance abuse issue or some kind of issue in that realm that Kate is trying to help her through, in addition to, of course, this just awful situation that she's found herself in. So I think that element of it is going to be what connects most with me. And then, of course, you've also just got the parent-child relationship and that question of how far would you go to save your child, which we can all talk about in theory and think about what kind of things to be willing to do for the people we love. But then you're standing in front of the person that you love most in this world, and they've gotten themselves in a terrible situation. And what kind of lines would you be willing to cross? That's going to be an interesting question to ask as well. So yeah, this trailer really hooked me, and I'm looking forward to this one, and I'm glad that it's coming up so soon. A really awesome lineup of Apple Original films over the next month.
Yeah, I think, it also touches on when does help become a hindrance. And so I'm really, really excited for this. I think another surefire hit worthy performance from Julianne Moore in another Apple original production. And I haven't seen one, Lacey's Story, Sharper, both absolute must-watches on Apple TV Plus. And also, I think this is going to be somewhat of a passing of the torch moment between the two leads. Really looking forward to Sydney Sweeney's performance, but also Domhnall Gleeson's role looks set to terrify. And can we please give mention to the casting of Bad Sisters Fiona Shaw? I've got a feeling this is going to be right up there for me come the end of year picks. And Echo Valley makes its debut Friday, June 13th on Apple TV Plus. So stacked June at home. But of course, there's a big release coming to theatres in June as well.
Yeah, F1, of course, coming to theaters June 27th. We got another trailer for that one this week. A little bit more of a glimpse into the film. More racing, more yelling. But I think really this one gives us more of a perspective into Brad Pitt's character and kind of his take on his return to racing, which I think is going to be a really interesting element of the film. So I thought it was a great trailer. They're really putting in the effort to build the hype for this one, which is good to see, giving it that full-fledged marketing campaign that a theatrical film needs. And I think this one is going to be a hit when it comes next month.
Now, also returning to screens in July 11th, so not far away at all, is the return of Foundation with its third season. We come back to the world of Foundation 152 years after the events of season 2, with the Foundation becoming increasingly established far beyond its humble beginnings, whilst the Clelonic dynasty's empire has dwindled as both of those galactic powers forge an uneasy alliance. A threat to the entire galaxy appears in the fearsome form of a warlord known as the Mule.
War is upon us.
And at the center of it is the Mule. He will destroy everything. I see something I like. I take it.
Foundation Season 3 returns under the guidance of David S. Goyer. It's based on the book series by Isaac Asimov, starring Jared Harris, Lee Pace, Lula Bell, Laura Byrne, Cassian Bilton, Terrence Mann, and Rowena King, with new cast members this season, including Cherry Jones, Brandon P. Bell, Sonove Carson, Cody Fern, Thomas Lamarcus, Alexander Siddig, Academy Award winner Troy Kutzer, and Pillow Asbach. Devon, this is one that I know you're really into in terms of the hardcore sci-fi. I think I've enjoyed parts of Foundation and got a little bit lost along the way and then found myself again. So lots going on here, and again, a vast story. We're now jumping 152 years into the future. I don't know where we are in terms of the galaxy and what has changed in that time, but a very exciting trailer.
Yes, this looks like a thrilling return after a long way away from the world of Foundation. This is the series on Apple TV Plus. I know a lot of people wish Severance could come sooner, which I totally agree with, but this is the one for me. I'm always like, man, when is Foundation coming back? Because I really do enjoy this one week to week, and I'm excited that we're getting it so soon. I think the thing about this one that I love so much is the time jumps, but the way they continue to incorporate the same actors, sometimes playing different characters, sometimes playing versions of themselves just in the future. And I just love kind of the idea of revisiting this cast of people a couple hundred years later, picking up on some of the storylines that got left in season 2, but also just seeing a totally different galaxy. Lee Pace grew his hair out for this one, which is very interesting. I want to see the story-wise how Cleon ends up there, because that's not something we've seen him do before. So that's going to be cool, but they know what they're doing, putting Lee Pace right at the beginning of the trailer and, drawing people in that way. And I'm really excited to see his return as Cleon. And then these new actors as well. Troy Kutzer. I mean, that's going to be awesome to see him involved. Cherry Jones is an actress that I'm a big fan of, so seeing her included in the world of Foundation as well. She's almost a staple on Apple TV Plus, like a lot of these people coming back around, which is great. So, yeah, what happens when the underdogs become the powerhouse, right? When the Foundation has become a central point of the galaxy as the Empire has withdrawn. I think that's going to be really interesting because, there's been points in history when the underdog takes power and it can go well, or, power can become a corrupting force as well. So that'll be really interesting to see. And I just love the long-term storytelling that they're doing with Foundation. And I'm just excited to see it continue. And of course, the show's future is very much up in the air with David S. Goyer stepping away after this season, but he was very much involved with season 3. So I'm excited to see what he put into it and how it all comes out on July 11th.
I think I'm going to have to tune in just to maybe get a hint at their skincare routines after all of those years. Maybe something I can nick there. And talking of skincare, Denzel Washington still looks incredible. Of course, part of the last trailer that we're going to talk about this week. More of a teaser than a full trailer. Highest to lowest. Spike Lee's reinterpretation of Akira Kurosawa's High and Low sees a Titan music mogul widely known as having the best ears in the business targeted with a ransom plot. He's jammed up in a life or death moral dilemma played out on the main streets of modern day New York City. Directed by Spike Lee, written by William Allen Fox, based on, again, Akira Kurosawa's classic film High and Low, starring Denzel Washington, Ilfanesh Hedera, Jeffrey Wright, Dean Winters, John Douglas Thompson, Ice Spice, and of course, A$AP Rocky. I am very, very excited for this. However, what this trailer gave me, or this teaser gave me, was nothing like I was expecting. And based on the teaser, it really bared no resemblance to Akira Kurosawa's High and Low. So I'm more intrigued and excited for Spike Lee's reinterpretation of the story as I am looking at it from a filmmaking and a historic point of view. I'm also very, very excited that it's coming a lot quicker than we thought. But first, what did you think?
Yeah, this is very much a teaser, but it's one that leaves me wanting more. I think they knew what they were doing in terms of just setting up, this is reuniting Spike Lee and Denzel Washington, and then giving you just a little bit of a glimpse of Denzel Washington's character, mostly through voiceover. I love the way he speaks. I think he just has a way of drawing you in. And this monologue that he does during the trailer, I found very compelling, but also very funny. There's a moment where he goes, "Can you handle the memes?" And that made me laugh. The other moment that stuck out to me and also made me giggle a little bit, and I have no idea how this came to be, but the best ears in the business are wearing gold-plated Beats headphones throughout the trailer. Which,
they are going to release those, babies.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome. So, yeah, this doesn't give away too much, but it gives you a little bit of the vibe of the film and just kind of builds up hype, which I think is what they're trying to do. Yeah, it's coming out sooner than we thought, but it's not coming too terribly soon. Highest to Lowest will debut in theaters August 22nd and on Apple TV Plus September 5th. After making its world premiere later this month at the Cannes Film Festival.
Can I just say, yes, in theatres. I'm so excited about that after, recent reports that we talked about many times about Apple's kind of switch from theatrical releases. That doesn't seem to have really come to pass altogether. And of course, there has been recent declaration of supporting theatres from Apple Original Films at a recent get-together of industry insiders, which is very, very cool. There is one film, however, that really was embroiled by all of the controversy when it came to Apple and their pivot away from theatrical runs. And that is Wolf's, the Clooney Pitt-led action caper from last year. It's now set for a digital release coming to PVOD May 20th and available for digital pre-order now. So it's nice to see that Apple Original Films, at least the minority of them, are making their way and finding a future outside of the service. We'll see if that continues. Let's talk about June 13th, Devon. We don't often highlight kids and family releases. I think this is going to be one that, could it be the debut review from Devon and Noah?
It's very possible. It might be a short review, but whether we have him on the podcast or not, I know my son is going to be very excited for the debut on June 13th of new Apple Original preschool series, Not a Box. It's based on the book of the same name by Antoinette Portis, and it follows Riley, an animated bunny who needs nothing more than an ordinary cardboard box and imagination to go on fantastic adventures in magical worlds. Isabel Birch stars as Barley, with Ian James Corbett playing a character named Adult. And the show encourages young audiences to tap into their creativity and embrace the power of imagination. I immediately sent this press release to you when I saw it yesterday, Sigmund, because before I even saw the headline, I saw the image and I thought, I know that book, and I am so excited this is going to be a show. My son is obsessed with this book about how you can transform a cardboard box into anything, a spaceship, a pirate ship, a robot costume. It's a great book, a great concept for a TV series, and I'm very excited to sit down with him and let him see his favorite book up on the screen. I think he's just going to think it's the greatest thing ever, and that's coming June 13th, so look out for, if not an interview with him, at least I'll share with you his reaction to it when we get to watch it.
I've got a funny feeling a lot of empty Apple boxes that really had no use may get repurposed when this releases. We'll have to wait and see. Some other good news. Acapulco will return for its fourth and final season on Apple TV Plus on July 23rd, with star and executive producer Eugenio Derbez stating, "These 4 seasons have been magical. Acapulco brought joy and heart to audiences around the world, and while saying goodbye is bittersweet, I'm so proud of what we created, from our incredible cast, writers and directors to the way we celebrated Mexico's culture, beauty and warmth. It's been an unforgettable ride, and a first look of the season is linked in the show notes." I know this is a show that we feel a deep fellowship with. Of course, James Lee's quote on his review during the Screen Times days was in the initial trailer for the first season, a memory that I will never forget, thanks to the people behind the show and to the people at Apple TV Plus. But yeah, another comedy, and a hit comedy, finding its end on Apple TV Plus.
I'm, of course, sad to see the show go, but I'm happy that it's ending on its own terms, that we're going in knowing this is the final chapter, that they can wrap things up. Listeners might remember that I had some issues with the 3rd season. I'm hoping they take it in a little bit direction with the 4th one, but I'm excited to see how this series ends. It's got a special place in my heart, and I'm excited to go in knowing that we're going to get the final chapter of Acapulco here on July 23rd. A couple of other renewals for Apple Originals include trying for a 5th season something that we've talked about on the show before. We knew was coming, but now we have official confirmation that Trying will return for season 5. And the studio, still airing its first season on Apple TV Plus, has already been renewed for a second season. Regarding the renewal of the studio, creators Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg stated, "We're thrilled to be making a second season of the studio. We're looking forward to taking the lived experiences of making season 1 and immediately putting it into season 2, then repeating that loop for 10 more seasons. And we're excited to keep all our industry friends and colleagues guessing as to when one of their personal stories will stream on Apple TV Plus." They've got to have a sense of humor even with the renewal announcement, Sigmund, but I'm loving the studio season 1 as it gets closer and closer to its 2-part finale, and I'm very excited that they're going to be coming back for more.
Now, recently there was a conversation had about the production process for the studio and its first season, and how it was filmed and written in a certain way in which I guess it was devoid of being able to have notes passed and re-edits, which I thought was very, very clever on the filmmaking and production point of view. Do we think the second season is going to see as much of a free ride as the first season got?
I think Apple probably learned its lesson that it needs to do notes on the scripts and not on the dailies or the edits, because it's just going to be a no going forward. But I think they've also probably learned what it looks like when you give those creators a little bit more freedom to really reach out into the industry and pull in people that you wouldn't expect. And I hope we see more of that kind of thing in the second season as well.
From the true life stories of Hollywood through the studio to the completely made up adventures of Dick Turpin now, broadcasts are reporting that Apple will release a final episode of the completely made up adventures of Dick Turpin using footage shot before production was cancelled due to lead star Noel Fielding's health concerns. So great to see that. I've heard a lot of British comedy names, not just names but icons, are a part of what was shot. So really excited to see that finally come to our screens in some shape or form. Whilst that is going to be rejigged in the editing suites, 2 other shows are also destined for the editing suites right now, as filming for season 3 of Silo and the second season of Palm Royale have recently wrapped, with Neuromancer production underway again, this time in Reading, England.
In development, Apple has ordered 8-episode drama series The Wanted Man, starring Hugh Laurie from Hijack creator George Kay. Also starring Thandie Newton, Fionn Whitehead, Gina McKee, Hazel Dupe, Blitz's Elliot Heffernan, and Stephen Dillon. The series charts the rise and fall of Felix Carmichael, the elusive and powerful head of notorious British crime syndicate, The Capital. Untouchable for 20 years, Carmichael is finally apprehended, but while he's held in the infamous Staplehurst prison, it becomes clear that he's been betrayed by one of his own. As the traitor moves to dismantle the empire he has built, Carmichael must risk everything in a daring escape. Now, this isn't the first we've heard of Hugh Laurie on Apple TV+. Of course, he was involved with Tehran Season 3, which is still yet to come to the streaming service, with no news as to when and if it will release on Apple TV+. Meanwhile, Gordon Ramsay will produce a new 8-part cooking docuseries entitled Knife Edge, Chasing Michelin Stars for Apple TV+. Hosted by Jesse Burgess, the series will follow elite chefs as they pursue the world's most prestigious culinary award.
I guess Think the Bear, but in real life?
Yeah, that sounds about right. These restaurants, I hear, can get very intense, and the tests for these Michelin stars are undercover, so they don't even know that the person is there. They just have to run these restaurants that way all the time. So yeah, I bet it does get really intense like that.
Lastly, the limited series adaptation of Apple original podcast Wild Things, Siegfried and Roy is officially a go at Apple TV Plus, with production set to begin this fall. Jude Law will start as Siegfried, and Andrew Garfield will play Roy. The 8-episode series will be written and showrun by Only Murder in the Building creator John Hoffman, with Imagine Entertainment production, and looks set to be a roaring good time. And depending on the popularity of this Devon, I think I'm going to go from being called from Sigmund to Sig to Siegfried. It's going to happen.
In casting news, Callie Rice from True Detective Night Country and Severance's and Your Friends and Neighbors Olafur Darri Olafsson have joined the cast of Apple Original High Series 12-12-12, which of course is led by Anthony Mackie and Jamie Dornan, which is set to begin filming this month in Hungary. Meanwhile, the cast of Apple Original Thriller series Cape Fear continues to grow, with Anna Baryshnikov from Love Lies Bleeding, Jamie Hector from Bosch, and Claire Wong from Billions coming aboard the series, which is led by Javier Bardem, Amy Adams, and Patrick Wilson. Katrona Balfe will join Tom Hiddleston and Willem Dafoe in Jennifer Piedom's upcoming Apple Original film Tenzing, centered on Sherpa Tenzing Norgay and his summit of Mount Everest in 1953, alongside Edmund Hillary. The film is currently filming in Nepal. And finally, Your Friends and Neighbors has added a trio of new cast members for its currently in production second season: Arian Mandy of The Night Agent, Aaron Robinson from Moonrise, and Brie Blair from SWAT. Speaking of Your Friends and Neighbors, it was ranked 7th in Luminate's streaming TV chart last week, with viewership growing to 401.2 million minutes watched. I think Your Friends and Neighbors was thought of as probably the most mainstream Severance follow-up, and it seems to be doing what Apple wanted it to do.
Little update for you, Devon. My vinyl collection is about to grow. I don't have a record player yet. Still, how many years now have I been promising that's going to be added at some point? Still hasn't, but they look beautiful. The artist lineup for the F1 album has been announced. The album, which is, I think, inspired by, and maybe parts of it are going to make it to the film, but the album is available to pre-add ahead of its June 27th release. Will include 17 tracks from the likes of Ed Sheeran, Rosé, Burna Boy, Roddy Ricch, Don Toliver, Doja Cat, Ray, Sexy Red, and more. And you can pre-order the physical version on multiple formats, including coloured vinyl, test pressings, and cassette. So, hey, if you've got a cassette player still handy somewhere, then why not? For the vinyl collectors out there, though, some great news. Mondo Music, in partnership with Water Tower Music, is proud to present the Bad Monkey Apple TV Plus original series soundtrack on 2x LP, celebrating the music of Tom Petty. New covers of iconic Petty songs from Eddie Vedder, The War on Drugs, Weezer, Fitz and the Tantrums, Jason Isbell, Marcus King, Sharon Van Etten, and more. And not only are you going to get those renditions, it's also going to be pressed on 2x 140 gram vinyl, with the double LP also including the main title theme from the series by composers Jamie Jackson and Waz, as well as the single Free Fallin', performed by Imaginary Future featuring Keena Grannis. So really excited for this. Of course, the big news in terms of vinyl and soundtracks that we've been awaiting is the Severance Season 2 vinyl release news that was promised. When will it drop? Well, it would appear to be delayed until later this year, and that's likely at the end of summer to coincide with the Emmy Awards, which are scheduled to take place at the beginning of September, and which I would imagine we're going to be hearing very, very soon about nominations for the show at that awards ceremony. But until then, we've still got some other award ceremonies to cover, Devon. Apple FYC. Never stops.
It never stops, Sigmund. And this week we got news and documentary Emmy nominations, including Outstanding Current Affairs Documentary for Bread and Roses, 2 nominations for Earth Sounds, including Cinematography and Sound, and Outstanding Graphic Design for one we haven't talked about in a minute, Omnivore. The News Night celebration will take place on June 25th, and the Documentary Night celebration will take place on June 26th, both at the Palladium Times Square in Manhattan. Congratulations to those nominees. And the Gotham Awards are coming up on June 2nd, which will see Brian Tyree Henry presented with the Performer Tribute for his portrayal of Ray Driscoll in Dope Thief. Congratulations to him. Check out that ceremony on June 2nd to see him honored.
Well, that was a lot, but now it's time for this week's Apple TV releases. Wednesday saw new episodes of Carême and Government Cheese, alongside the penultimate episode of The Studio at CinemaCon this time. Part 1 of a great 2-part finale there. And we also saw plenty of midweek action on MLS Season Pass, kicking off the league's annual rivalry week. On Friday, we see the premieres of this week's highlight, Murderbot, alongside new Apple original documentary film, Deaf President Now, which we will be talking about on next week's episode, alongside new episodes of Your Friends and Neighbours and Long Way Home. And of course, on Friday night, we get a double header of Friday Night Baseball, with Houston Astros at Texas Rangers at 8 p.m. Eastern and Seattle Mariners at San Diego Padres at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And Saturday sees more MLS game day on MLS Season Pass. MLS Season Pass now available at a 30% discount, $69 for the remainder of the season for non-Apple TV Plus subscribers and $59 for Apple TV Plus subscribers. Atlanta United versus Philadelphia Union is on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern and will be available for free in the EA Sports FC mobile app in the extra time section. And speaking of free, Sunday sees Sunday Night Soccer this week. Miami versus Orlando and LA versus LAFC. Both games available to everyone in the TV app. And if that wasn't enough, Devon, we got some extras.
Yes, we always have lots of great extras. This week, Apple had a couple of really touching Mother's Day videos, including There's More Than One Way to Mother, highlighting moms on Apple TV+, and A Gift for Mom, which features a dad filming the first year of their child's life in spatial video and presenting it as a Mother's Day gift on Apple Vision Pro. Really touching there. There's a new shot on iPhone 16 Pro short film called Last Scene, a film by Koreeda Hirokazu, and a behind the scenes of that as well. Finally, you've got a special from Blackmagic Design featuring Korn. What is this about?
Yeah, so Korn, the seminal new metal 90s band headed by Jonathan Davis, I think cousin of Skrillex, if I remember correctly. They celebrate their 30th anniversary recently, and as part of the anniversary, we get a behind the scenes with Blackmagic camera for iOS, where 200 fans had been picked to be part of the band's cinematography team for the historic night. All of their footage live streaming back to the truck and being part of both the stage show and the anniversary footage, which is yet to be released at the time of recording. But very, very, very cool concept here, and really showing the power of filmmaking in anyone's hands. I'm really, really excited to see the fruits of this project. But yeah, what an immense project put together, and a great behind the scenes look. I think it's going to give people a lot of ideas going forward.
Yeah, that's a great demo. Sounds very Apple-like, the way they're just taking technology, putting it in people's hands and showing off what it can do. And a great video to check out. Of course, we'll link it in the show notes. That leads us to this week's TV app highlights, things that people can watch this week. Sigmund, what have you got for us?
Well, a number of things now available, starting very quickly. Wick is Pain, available on PVOD. It's a 2025 American documentary film about the John Wick franchise, focusing on the independent nature of the franchise's birth, alongside behind the scenes, and also depicting a fascinating showcase of the stunt teams involved. We've also got Queen of the Ring. This is a little known film that's come to PVOD, and a superb biographical sports drama about female professional wrestler and early pioneer Mildred Burke. Nonus also came to Netflix this past week, with Vince Vaughn playing a man risking everything to honour his late mother by opening an Italian restaurant with actual Nonas, grandmothers, as the chefs. And we saw the return of Poker Face with its second season on Peacock. The clever episodic mystery series with Natasha Lyonne has returned, with the human lie detector continuing to solve crimes, and a great guest cast in there as well, as good as the first season so far. On PVOD this week, a Minecraft movie is available now in the TV app. This year's first breakout box office success based on the hit video game starring Chief of War's Jason Momoa alongside Jack Black. You've also got The Wedding Banquet on PVOD this week with Killers of the Flower Moon and Fancy Dance star Lily Gladstone alongside Bowen Yang, starring in this wonderful American comedy about a gay man who proposes a green card marriage to a female friend in exchange for paying for her IVF treatment. However, things soon get complicated when his grandmother surprises them with plans for an extravagant Korean wedding banquet. And we've also got some new series coming this week. Duster is on Max, created by J.J. Abrams, set in the 1970s with a getaway driver encountering a tenacious FBI agent who wants to take his crime family down, with a breakout lead performance here from Rachel Hilson. Overcompensating on Prime Video makes its debut and follows Ben, a closeted former football player, as he becomes fast friends with Carmen, a high school outsider. With guidance from his older sister and her boyfriend, Benny and Carmen juggle horrible hookups, flavoured vodka and fake IDs. And lastly, in terms of new original series, The Bet on Netflix. This is one that I think you're going to love, Devon. It's based on the manga Kakegurui Compulsive Gambler. The new series sees a transfer student from Japan disrupting a boarding school's power structure with her gambling skills, challenging the student council whilst pursuing revenge that could overturn the entire system. And finally, available to stream is multi-Academy Award winner The Brutalist, coming to Max this week.
Awesome. Lots of TV app highlights, but of course we like to end every episode with our up next picks. I've got a music pick this week, Sigmund. It's an album called Sunrise City by the band Sub Radio. They're a pop punk band out of Washington, D.C. I've always known them on Instagram as making kind of meme songs.
Okay.
They did a cover of Stacy's Mom called Stacy's Dad. That cracked me up a lot. They've got a Star Wars one called Mr. Darkside, which is great, but I'd never really looked into their non-jokey music until this album, and it's a great one. It's got a couple of really great songs that I enjoy. I mean, the whole thing is good, but a couple standouts for me are Sleep on the Beach and Nothing's Broken. So check that out. It's a great album, and we're supporting some up-and-coming music artists.
Well, it's funny that we're both on the same wavelength this week, because my up next pick this week is a musical artist, well, a band that I'm very, very much into, Turnstile. They put on a show just this past week at the Wyman Park Dell in Baltimore, and it was a show in benefit for the homeless community in the area. Free water was given out, and QR codes were given out where people could scan them and make donations to help the local homeless community. And this whole set, called Never Enough, is available on YouTube. It was shot from the back of the stage by Noah Haycock, and I think was shot on VHS. At least that's what it looks like. Of course, a great cause and a brilliant performance ahead of the band's new album releasing next month. You can check out that performance on YouTube. And of course, lots of cities are cleaning up areas that would otherwise be havens for the homeless communities within them as tourism rockets over the summer months. So make sure to help support your local homeless community in any way you can through designated charities. And this month is also Mental Health Awareness Month. To commemorate that distinction, my other up next pick for this week is Stutz from 2022, a candid conversation with actor Jonah Hill and leading psychiatrist Phil Stutz, exploring his early life experiences and unique visual model of therapy. So a great week, lots and lots to watch, lots to listen to, lots to catch up on, lots to play, and well, I think this is where we should end this episode.
Yeah, that's our episode for everyone this week. Thanks so much for listening. We very much appreciate you. And of course, we want to hear from you as well. You can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes, or you can reach out via our contact form, also linked in the show notes as well.
We'll be back next week as we revisit Apple Original Films' Deaf President Now and get led by Guy Ritchie on the search for the fountain of youth. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week. And for everyone that sent a little message or a comment when we were missing this past week, we really, really appreciate you and thank you so much.
See you next week.